this is the commentary, I guess. So, the Edwards Recycling Service, or Garbage the Train Service, was the first one I made, and it really kind of shows how, because you got the different title font, which you just saw, and the story's very different from what came afterwards, you know? Because, like, Sodor Anthology went either really deep or really stupid, and this is just kind of a straightforward Thomas story. But nevertheless, it was the pilot story, you know? And yeah, it's something that, to describe the creative process with this, you just gotta do it, you know? Like, for this, I came up with this little story. I wanted to do a story about the recycling cars and Whiff. Well, Whiff just gets introduced, but, you know, whatever. Because I don't like Whiff's introduction in the TV series as it is, because it's like, he's portrayed as, like, stupid. It's weird. I don't know. That's, like, probably one of my least favorite Hit Model era episodes. Because Whiff sucks, and Whiff is kind of cool when he's not sucking. But, yeah. I don't have no clue where this like really started from, other than the fact I was looking at the recycling cars and I thought, hey, that could be a story. It just kind of happened. In a typical adaptation, I think people would use Emily in this role, but I thought Edward was really suitable for this role in this story, where, you know, Edward doesn't want to be the garbage engine, but he doesn't want to upset Sir Topham Hatt, so he doesn't have the power to tell him, I don't want to do this. Like, if this were, like, James, for example, or really any, like, a lot of other characters, they'd be like, screw that, I'm not doing this, sir. And then they get put in the shed, you know. But Edward doesn't really take advantage of the fact that he's a respected engine, you know. There's Carl's voice, for some reason. I didn't like it. Like I said, this was the pilot, basically. Essentially the pilot. This little bird prop from like one of those like holiday like Hausa things. Boko. I had Boko be the voice of reason character. Or the influencing, I don't know, what would you call that? A character who shows up and gives advice. The advice-giving character. In my little head, Boko is sort of Edward's influence. Like how Edward is typically the engine who influences the others, Boko is the one who can influence Edward. They work off of each other, you know? Boko goes to Edward, Edward goes to Boko. They have the same sort of level of intelligence. I'm very smart. Oh yeah, so Sir Topham Hatt in this episode and the next one is his little, it's the take and play figure. The reason for that was, I started using paper figures midway through the series. Not really midway through, because I use them in the next episode. In like, production-wise, I made this and then Joe, I think. Yeah, it would have been this. No, it would have been this, Whiff and Billy, Joe, Bubbles, and then the Runaway. So, yeah. And I used this figure was just what I used before I went to paper, and yeah, that explains that. Except for in the Runaway, there's another reason for that. This has a little bit of wackiness in it, because Sir Topham Hatt is a very silly man in this, but he goes full silly next episode, but we'll get there. Some people said this had a pretty rushed introduction for Whiff, but whatever. It's the average Thomas episode length. And it's not really Whiff's story, it's Edward's story, so that's my defense for this. So the Runaway, I don't know. This one is out there, to say the least. It's the most absurd. The reason why is because I wanted to show the range of Sodor Anthology, hence why it's episode 2. It's also unfortunately episode 2 because, I don't know. But I wanted to really show off that Sodor Anthology could be this little silly show. But if you didn't know, this episode is actually a complete rip-off of another series, of not really a series because it only lasted like 3. I made it in 2016 when I was young and annoying, called Thomas the Erdl Engine and Others, and this is based off of an episode of that. It's literally the same concept, same premise, same basically everything, you know. And yeah, it's not very original, and I just kind of wanted to do this fun little episode to really show off that Sir Topham Hatt is a really silly man, and a very dangerous man at that. And the reason why... Okay, this actually was the last one to be produced, so... the Sir Topham Hatt figure, I already had the paper one, but I wanted to use the take and play one for this, because using the paper one would just kind of make him seem more, you know, flat, like, because he's made of paper. I'll be here all week. But, yeah. So doing these bridge shots, Sir Topham Hatt did not fit through a lot of the bridges, so, yeah. You see when he jumps the bridge, Sir Topham Hatt is not in Duck's cab. On Duck's cab, because he doesn't go in because it's a wooden block. There's Fergus in the background. Fergus may be in Season 2. We'll wait and see. So reason for why... I mean, obviously I chose Duck because he was in the fucking thing I ripped off, but... Duck, it's actually really accurate to his character, because in my little head of Duck, he's a loyal engine. He's obviously willing to question, like we see in his later episode, but he is a loyal engine to whoever he serves under. Hence why he is Sir Topham Hatt's police engine. This episode's very ridiculous, okay?
Duck, I'm going to tell you something I have never told any of my other engines. And what's that, sir? Duck, I am going to jump out of your cab and into Thomas's, and then you will crash into a wall and die.
Making sets is really hard. That's why it's very shaky cam, because I didn't want him to have to make like fucking 7 sets, and tracking is hard because they're little. I think the lesson here is be lazy. That's what I really want to get across to the kids, you know? Just fuck all and be lazy, you know? Because it don't matter. You're making Thomas the choo-choo train videos. You're just going to get bullied in school. And no one will love you, okay? I want you to know that, okay, kids? This station here is supposed to be Kildane, fun fact. Up the line would be the where Billy's becomes a landowner took place, so... Fun fact, kids.
Cash me outside, how about that?
I forgot he said that, so now I'm mad. You know that girl made like a bunch of money? I think it was an NFT sale. I should make NFTs. In the Erdl Engine episode, it's Birdie who's the bus, but I wanted to save Birdie's role for, you know, the Birdie episode of this series. That's the Runaway. I don't really like it. Sorry to be pessimistic, but yeah. Filling up credits when you do everything by yourself is really hard. That's why that's that. Let's talk about depression, kids. Kids, I made this when I was really sad, and this whole series has been a farce. It's been a big lie, a big emotional lie. Now it's time for Joe Swanson Gets the Express. This one, this is based off of a Twitter edit made by the Dagenrampa guy from Twitter. I think he made it. I'm not sure, but he gets the credit. It is very similar to the episode of a similar name, Henry Gets the Express. But I did change the end to be more emotional. This was a good transitional episode, going from the Runaway to the more nuanced sort of tone I like to take. The Runaway is ridiculous, I don't like it.
Gordon, at least 3 of us here have pulled the
I think all of them have actually pulled the Express before.
Well,
Edward
no
would
one
have
does it
formally
as
pulled the
well as
Express.
who knows, Gordon?
James definitely
Maybe
pulled it.
someone
Thomas
new
pulled it
will
in that
come
one
along.
episode. Percy,
Like that could never
triple header. Yeah. Assume that most of the events that happen in the Railway series and TV series happen in this series, okay? I don't do adaptions.
Joe Swanson.
Except for the With
Who
episode.
knows?
That didn't happen.
Maybe if you pull the Express well enough, it'll become your full-time job.
So
Joe
Starlight brings in
Swanson,
this
beam.
wheelchair man from Family Guy to pull his most
Looks like
important
that
train.
noisy Gordon has some competition.
Why?
Is
I don't know.
anyone going to question this at all? No.
Arthur is very smart. Just like me, I'm
Wonder
very
what
smart.
Gordon would think of this. Edward soon found out. My Express.
That's Joe's whistle. That's not Joe saying, "Hey Peter." That's supposed to be his whistle, just to be clear. Joe doesn't say anything. In the Wikia page for this, it'd say Joe Swanson does not speak, in parentheses, you know.
Sure enough, Joe Swanson was making good time, and the passengers sang his praises. We fucking love you, Joe Swanson.
I got to record these parts when, like, all the people in my house were gone, so that's why I got to scream that line.
Meanwhile, Gordon was sent to work at the narrow gauge transfer yards.
Paxton passed because
Oh,
Paxton
the
works near the narrow
shame,
gauge
the
engines, just to be
shame.
clear.
A big, proud engine like me reduced to this little tank engine work with the little old...
No one to use Ivo, Hugh, and Duke, because, I don't know, they're lesser used narrow gauge engine characters.
Kind of afraid.
Like, you'd expect Duke to be like, you know, screw you, you friggin' idiot. Not like that, but you know, I'm not good at improv. That's why I write
It
scripts.
probably can hear you all the way from the Blue Mountain.
I made Duncan be the
What's all
straight
your
man
boiler
because
aching about? The
I
fat
feel like
controller gave
Duncan
my
doesn't
express to
care
some
about
guy.
feelings, you know.
Stop your crying and go get it back.
Duncan will run you over.
Right. I've got to chuff right to Knapford and demand my express back. Yeah, good job, Dunk. Yeah, I did it for myself.
I feel like he's kind of a laid back guy. I don't know if we'll ever see him again, but that's just kind of my headcanon for him. Look at him with his stupid smile. So Dogmat is the only figure who has alternate, like, positions. Like, he has the side view, back view, and the front view.
You can see me tell Joe Swanson that he's the new express engine. What? That's right. He's made record time, and the passengers and other engines love him. He's a perfect fit for the railway. But I'm the express engine. Sorry, Gordon, but not anymore.
Dogmat's a bit mean in this, but, you know, everyone makes mistakes.
Ah, Joe, it's good to see
Because it really
you
is
right on
Dogmat's
time.
mistake. That's what the episode ends with.
I have big
He
news for
apologizes to Gordon for
You're
trying to
going
replace
be the
him.
new permanent express
Nobody's
engine.
perfect.
Joe Swanson was happy.
That's some dating advice, kids.
Gordon was sad.
No one's gonna be perfect.
Well, Joe, enjoy the express.
Gordon knows when he's beat.
Joe began to feel something different. He felt badly.
This scene at night, I had to reshoot this.
That night at the shed,
Because,
after all the engines
if you
were
know
shut
my
in,
popular video called
forever
Monster
left,
Under the Shed,
and they
it was
all
very
fell
dark
asleep,
like that one.
Joe Swanson knew
And I got closer. It wasn't perfect. Doing night scenes is really hard, dudes. But a bunch of people who never make content tell me it sucks. It's like, okay, cool. It's nice. Nice that you know things. Joe Swanson, he takes the leave, you know? He realizes that Sodor is not his place. He lives in Quahog with Peter Griffin. It's sad. It's real sad.
The next morning at Knapford, there was confusion and delay. Joe Swanson was missing.
That's the sound that microwaves make. I hate anime girls. I made this before I turned 18, so you will not be seeing any more of them in the next year, in the next season.
There's no sign
Well,
of
there might be
Joe
one.
Swanson. I should have known this was a mistake. There's only one way to make this right.
See, Gordon's at some fault for being a little bitch, but you know, it's a two characters journey. Gordon and Sir Topham Hatt.
And what do you want? Gordon, I don't often say this, but I was wrong, and I'm sorry. You are.
We rarely see Sir Topham Hatt apologize to his engines, right?
Please come back to
He did it once in Salat, I think. He apologized. Did he apologize to Thomas? Yeah, he did.
Gordon happily
I forget.
returned to the express. The passengers were glad to see their old friend return, and secretly, the engines thought so too. But Gordon knows why.
Yeah, the engines had a laughing matter about
and he's eternally grateful.
Gordon being kicked off the express. And, you know, Joe's really the hero of the episode. Joe's really the hero of everything, isn't he? What a great guy, in my opinion. The next one's the Mr. Bubbles episode.
Bye, have a beautiful time.
I love him. Mr. Bubbles, the clown in the Great Railway Show. So I want to do a Mr. Bubbles episode because I think Mr. Bubbles is just great, right? So, with this episode, I made Duck the main engine character as to sort of elaborate on his sort of loyalty, but also he's not a complete pushover, you know? Like his original introduction. He comes to Sodor, and while he's respectful to everyone, he has an edge to him, where he's like, I'm not gonna sit back and take a back seat to all this. He's gonna question. But he is very loyal to his establishment, you know? Like, he loves the Great Western. And like we saw in the Runaway, how he's loyal to Sir Topham Hatt, you know, he grows loyalty to people. But he's not completely loyal, you know? He has to take time to really get to know. Like, he knows that Mr. Bubbles is not a good fit. He trusts Sir Topham Hatt because Sir Topham Hatt is a trusted figure. For the most part. Anyways.
Mr. Bubbles, sir.
And he's nice. See, he still calls Mr. Bubbles sir.
No need to worry, my boy, because all trains are canceled. Canceled? The passengers overheard and were very upset. But Mr. Bubbles did not care. Yes, all trains are canceled for today and until I feel like it. Now go to your sheds. Oh, the indignity.
Mr. Bubbles has a lot of ego built up in him, you know.
Okay, see you later, Mr. B.
Because he's this famous clown, apparently.
Mr. Bubbles, I can't go to my shed. There's still a plane in my way. What's your name, kiddo? Well, I'm Duck. The Duck!
In this episode, Mr. Bubbles thinks that the most basic comedy is hilarious. And that's why he's a big failure. Because it's like, look, windmills exist, you know. Just write an object, windmills. And that's hilarious because they exist. But there's really nothing beyond the surface level of the funniness of existence. That is the Mr. Bubbles car. It comes from like a real wood toy set, which is some like off-brand wooden toy company. I got it in a store that was I got like 3 of those sets because they were really cheap because the store was closing. It's closed now, but they didn't have like any of the Thomas stuff or whatever. That was just the only train thing. There I got a bunch of bridge pieces, which you saw in wasn't a Sodor anthology, but last year I did a Green Controller adaptation, and it was in that. That was fun. That shot is actually from the end, because if you look in the background, there's Bubble Coach. Fun fact. I'm exposing my own faults. I'm such a great guy.
Here comes one right now.
So this is obviously a reference to the funny time in 2011 where Den's face was just like an impact text meme.
Look at this engine, but that's just a normal diesel.
And that's not funny, you know? It's just, look, it's weird and it exists. Isn't that hilarious?
Face absolutely hilarious? I guess it is odd, but that's not really funny. There's no real punchline. It's just calling attention to something that exists. No
So
one
now
cares
I made a
about
tweet
your
about
opinion,
this.
Duck.
This is a thread.
This train's face is
But I'm going to
hilarious.
explain it here as
Just
official
see what Duck
documentation.
thinks this railway show starts
This is an
doing
analogy
all the
for
laps.
all of Thomas and Carl, you know. Because in Thomas and Carl, it's a very look at the references type of show, and that's why I don't want to continue it ever again. And that's why, yeah, it's over.
Harvey, Philip,
2-year anniversary this summer.
and even
I'm not doing anything for it.
Wait a minute. Where's that engine I had special?
Mr. Bubbles makes Squidward walking sound effects. I don't know if you realize that. I love Busy Bee James. Such a great guy. Oh, he said a bad word.
You. All right, it's time for the great Bubbles.
And Mr. Bubbles is very oblivious to any sort of criticism. He's like a lot of users in the Thomas community. I mean, oh great, I already started.
Wait, I don't understand. Where are all the people giving me money to see my?
And that's all Mr. Bubbles really cares about. He cares about the outcome,
As I said,
but he doesn't care about how he gets there. And so when the outcome fails, he doesn't realize it.
and even if we did have more comedic qualities, that's not.
This is very much an allegory for Thomas and Carl.
People come to railway shows to see history in engines and the interesting stories behind them. Not just one-line jokes that's humor is only based on the fact of mere existence.
Did I mention this is a Thomas and Carl analogy?
Given me a lot to think about.
Isn't it funny how Carl exists and how Thomas the Tank Engine also exists? Wouldn't it be funny if they existed together? Oh wait, they do. That's hilarious. Pan flute. I love the pan flute. I found this outside. So in my headcanon, the mainland is outside. Is the outside. So yes, Mr. Bubbles walked all the way from Knapford Station to the mainland and onward. So it was a long evening to say the least. These are some of the locations you saw in the Royal engine from last year. That's the bridge. Did a lot of bridge shots. I never went here. We have a pond. That's just kind of where I shoot around. That's where I did my my 1-minute short last year during lockdown stuff. Lockdown homework, when they had no clue what they were doing. I had the one with James where I did an advertisement. That was my last project I did of the year, so that was fun. That wasn't fun.
Mr. Bubbles, you're back. Indeed I am, Duck.
So
I've
really,
decided what to do.
Mr. Bubbles deserves to die.
I'm gonna get you all painted to look like bees.
Because he's
It'll be a
not
great
going
bee
to
railway
change.
All right. Plan 2. Boko.
So Mr. Bubbles dodges the moving diesel electric train.
Stupid-ass bees for my own
But
amusement.
as you see
All right,
here,
Plan 3. George.
he has no clue what to do about George. The fucking steamroller. The fucking slow steamroller. He just stands and waits.
Wait. What? No.
I love Blaine's Models comedy. That's the joke. Don't hate that. It's supposed to be the joke, you dumb.
We're finally free. The next morning, work on the railway returned to normal.
There's Whiff again with this garbage train, so reference to
Plenty of
the first
passengers
episode.
and work to be done.
This takes place later in the timeline because Philip is the pilot, but we'll get into the timeline stuff at a later point. And when I made this, I thought it was the worst one, but honestly, it's kind of my favorite one, if I'm being real here. I really think the characters work, and the comedy works well too. So that's my opinions. Yeah, this is out of date because I actually do kind of like this one. Now we go to more serious episodes. What a twist. This is such a great series. So I paired Billy and Neville together in this episode because looking at them, they they're the most polar opposite
Billy, you're the silly one, Billy.
in the
I
series
heard about
of the of the new series, new characters. Because Billy is this reckless, do what I want kind of guy, and Neville, while he doesn't have much character personality, I kind of elaborated on him a little bit because they didn't give us much to work with. I always interpreted Neville as kind of timid, the shy kind of engine who doesn't really stand up for himself,
Whenever you see him or a diesel like him,
like he did in the episode where he just kind of took the punches of being called a diesel and stuff.
Don't be silly, Billy. Shortly later,
The original title for this was "Don't Be Silly, Billy," but I changed it to "Billy Becomes a Landowner" because that's an expression for death. So in mine, a lot of people portray the Iron Twins as complete, grim messengers of doom,
no, you don't.
But I wanted to show, because, ever since their first appearance in Season 5, they were they were a bit of jokesters. But they had that sinister side to them, and that's how I kind of have them here. They mess with Billy and Neville,
Maybe I'll return here with Harry.
but then, they still have that side where they want to scrap them. So they can be...
Billy, I told you
They're not like Splatter and Dodge
but
levels,
he bumped us.
because they have that
Just
edge,
like that.
but they aren't completely
Very
like,
fast reactions like
scrappy,
that.
scrappy,
So
kill,
if you
kill.
don't react, they'll eventually stop. But because you gave Bert that
And I wanted to show off
with
Neville's
Harry, just to harass us.
complacency, is the word.
Neville was right.
Because he just wants to be a sideline. Just ignore it and move on. Which does have some truth to it, but that's a philosophy argument I'm not ready to get into.
Harry, I'm colorblind. Shut up, Bert.
Bert's kind of the dull one of the two,
Okay.
if that wasn't clear.
Billy boy.
Kind of colorblind. Not saying colorblind people are stupid,
In fact,
but they are.
you'd be the best
I'm
piece
sorry.
we have. You see,
What's
our
the color
kennels take a
orange?
while to turn orange, but
I don't like how I said
already are.
orange. It's like
What do you think
orange.
about that?
I don't
Why
know.
don't you come down and find out? Like I'd ever visit you. Oh, you might just soon.
There's a Spider-Man 3
Oh,
poster. This doesn't take
Billy,
place in
don't
2007,
interact
just to
with
be
those
clear.
two. You're going to get
I wasn't
yourself
thinking
into
when
a
I did
heap of
that.
trouble, and maybe even both of us. Just do me a favor, okay? Just please ignore them. Ugh, fine, I'll try. The next time Harry and Bert oiled by, Billy stayed quiet. Hello, Rusty Orange. The offer still stands to come and join us. See, Billy, so much easier to just ignore them.
See, Billy is a very straightforward engine
You
where,
just gotta give it time. Once they realize you don't
like, he's
care
given
about
advice, but the minute it doesn't
them,
work
then
out,
Harry
like,
and Bert
immediately,
But
he
this
goes
time
against
they
it,
said
as we see
no.
here. So obviously, if they continue to not react to Harry and Bert, they would eventually stop. It takes time for these things. He doesn't realize that it takes time. It's a human problem we all kind of have.
Uh-oh. Look what they've done.
And Billy is a very
Oh,
defensive
I'll be all right.
engine.
Just get the pack
And he's very set in his ways,
and then move it over.
and he deserves what's about to happen to
No,
him.
Neville. I gotta get those diesels and make them pay for what they did.
See, you gotta have a reason for death, fellas.
Great.
This is not a message to all the little fandom writers. This actually is a complete message to all the little fandom writers who do this whole death thing where you kill off all the characters, like bang, bang, bang. Like, you gotta have a reason to kill off the characters. And this is because Billy is not, he's stuck in his ways and he goes off and does stuff like this. He's a silly engine and he got what was coming to him. Not because it'd be cool if he died.
Surely this is their yard. It's a complete mess. What kind of a goods yard is this? It's no goods yard.
It's a bad yard. It's a Journey Beyond Sodor reference. So Billy dies, thankfully. A lot of people said I'm a hero for this, and yeah, I am. Neville. Maybe we'll see some more of him.
Wonder when Billy will
Who
be
knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Well, here's the entire reason why I even did this audio commentary. End of the Road is the kind of, fucky one of the series. I mean, the others have Joe Swanson pulling the express, Mr. Bubbles becoming controller of the railway, and, shit like that. And this one is kind of about death and existentialism. I think this really cemented that this series is literally whatever. In a good way, in a good way, and literally whatever. Because that's what I literally want, whatever. I'm amazing, guys. So Bertie wanted to keep this from Thomas, because Bertie's not an emotional character, He's he's rather just, let's just, He never likes to talk very much. He just kind of keeps to himself. And usually that blows over, as you see in, Trust Thomas, where he, is like, fuck off, I hate all of you. A commenter left this. I'm going to pretend like I thought of this, but, bus preservationism is very less than, everything else on Sodor. The engines, obviously, and characters like Trevor and George, or, and Harold. It's like, there's plenty of people who are interested in that, but, who really wants a bus, So that's why I felt like Bertie was the perfect character for this. Because if I did Harold, it's like, well, someone would come along and take Harold, but, But I feel like Bertie is a very core character to do this with. I was thinking of this idea about how all the engines on Sodor get to, be preserved and, go on and such, but everything else, nothing else gets owned by the Fat Controller, And I really want to credit Sodor's, preservationism all to Sir Topham Hatt. Because he's the man saying, no, let's continue using the steam engines, even if they harm our ecosystem. But that's an issue we're not going to get into. It's too complicated for Thomas, but let's not think about that.
But think of it as 3 trucks with the brake van.
Just for context, this takes place in the late 20th century? I don't know my centuries. I'm not quite sure. I know when this took 90s. It takes place in the 90s. I could have just said that. So, by now everyone has their own vehicle. Most everyone has their own vehicle. But, around that time it was pretty much just a common thing where you had your own car. So what's the need for Bertie? Who, he drives around in a farm area. Everyone got their pickup trucks.
About Bertie.
This uses the silly Sir Topham Hatt figure because this was done. This was like the 3rd episode? No. This was either first or this is not first, obviously, but it was either 2nd or 3rd. It definitely wasn't after that, because typically finales are shot early on, so you have a direction of where you're going.
But we're worried what'll happen if no one wants him.
I really wish I did reshoot this with the paper figure, though, because I just don't like that figure.
Sir, we were wondering if maybe you could purchase him. Thomas, sorry about Bertie, but I'm just the railway controller. I have no need for a bus.
I did really want to show that Sir Topham Hatt does have limits, He can't do everything. He can't save everyone. He's just the railway controller.
I'm sorry that I can't help Thomas. I know Bertie is a good friend to you and your branch line, but his best option is to take the chance on whatever may be next. Thomas didn't know what to say. He just felt sad.
There are a lot of quiet moments in this, and I really did that just to set the tone for it all. Because it's a very somber episode. There's no happy ending. But we'll get to the happy ending in the end. So this upcoming scene with Douglas and Toad, it's a trick, really, because where you think the story is gonna go, because it's usually about the heroics, with, save the engine from scrap, bring him back, get the vicar to save him, get Sir Topham Hatt to save him. And that doesn't always happen. So this part with Donald and Douglas is the blind hope that there might be a chance. And while, it works for, these engines, it doesn't always work out. Is there a word for a scene that is made to throw the audience off? Because that's what this is. I feel like there is. Red herring? No, that's in like that's like a character.
Do you think I ever asked me old controller for permission to hop on
Misdirection? I don't know.
Did Ollie ever ask his old Great Western controller if he could not go to the scrapyard? Well, no, he didn't, Mr. Douglas. Exactly. Sometimes you just gotta take action, Tommy. Go against what the man says.
Donald and Douglas don't have much plans for, but that's how I kind of see them as. I see them as like going against the norm sort of characters. This shot may be one of my favorites of the entire season, but I don't know.
Birdie, I have a plan to save you. Oh, Thomas. I'll get you on this flatbed, and then I'll take you somewhere safe. Somewhere hidden.
So Thomas wants to take the Oliver approach to it, where you run and hide, basically.
Your fat controller is a generous man. It's made you all so naive. Thomas,
So this does get...
don't want to spend an eternity.
It gets into the reality, because Sodor is a dream, really.
Maybe.
Not literally, but you know what I mean. Metaphorically, it's a dream. Because things don't last, is what I'm trying to say here. It's very obvious I was in a very nihilistic mindset when I wrote this.
Well, of course I did.
But I did want to show that, like, it's not bad, necessarily. Because, like Birdie says, it's damaging.
These changing times.
And sometimes you just gotta move on.
The price I pay has outweighed the reward, and when that happened, it just felt like it was time to move on to whatever may be.
I'm a very sad person.
I know that's probably a bit too deep to understand right now, and I'm sure you will one day, if that ever truly happens.
And it really doesn't.
But
just to be clear,
please
that
respect my decision.
Thomas will never know
Of course I will.
what it's like to die.
Thomas, you're a good friend. I better be going now. But Birdie,
This line up here about "let's have a race" is something that just had to be in there. Like, I could not end this without that line. How I decided to end this episode, it literally is if you know the music, it's from the Mother Simpson episode of The Simpsons. And it's sort of off of that, where you typically expect the main character to go back to the sheds or go back home and, like, see the other main characters and be like, hey, it's okay. But I really wanted to show the, I guess, I don't want to say human side, but just the relaxed sort of side where the character just reflects on what's happening. It actually was originally planned for Thomas to, see Percy and Toby and everyone else, and almost everyone else. But I decided to go with this ending, because I like it was more fitting, where his world is shooken, We're all gonna die.